Pastor Jeff Chilson, also the author today, and he will introduce Heather Dziedzic for her 10th speech. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, everyone. We are very excited to hear your 10th speech, Heather. For those who are at the onset of their Toastmasters education career, you're starting with icebreaker speeches, trying to purge yourself of some of the speaking mannerisms that you've done that are distracting to your audience, trying to move forward, trying to incorporate vocal variety and gestures, and being able to tackle abstract concepts and make them clear to the audience. And this finishes off with these last two speeches. The ninth one, Persuasive Power, and this final one, Inspire Your Audience. So here are the objectives for this particular speech. Inspire the audience by appealing to noble motives and challenging the audience to achieve a higher level of beliefs or achievement. And also, appeal to the audience's needs and emotions using stories, anecdotes, and quotes that have around them. So with her 10th speech, which is entitled, This Land is Your Land, please welcome rising star Heather Dziedzic.
Just a minute to warm up. I just assumed that we would have a patriotic theme for today, being that we were so close to the holiday. I should have known that Miss Bethany.
You're even wearing the colors.
Is it the 4th of July?
It would be.
Yeah.
It's our last meeting before the 4th of July.
Oh, you're right. They call you a patriotic.
That's the goal. Some of these images may be familiar to some. Make America Great Again. What a great slogan, right? No matter where you fall on the political spectrum, this is bound to stir something in you. Maybe it's excitement, maybe it's a little bit of vomit. Doesn't matter. It did its job. It's a slogan. It's designed to be inspirational, to attach itself to a feeling, a person, an image, and to do all of that in a single line. Make America Great Again. It sticks with you, right? So no matter where you are, you're going to remember that. And in a matter of weeks, our two dominant political parties in our country are going to sit down in their national conventions. And they're essentially going to give their stamp of approval to two presumptive candidates. Candidates who have spent the last few months campaigning, earning the attention, earning the votes, the delegates, the super delegates, all of these things to earn their position in their party. And even among all of that, there are candidates that aren't really resonating with the public. There are 320 million citizens in this country, and we're down to two, but nobody really likes that much. And early on in the campaign, we're starting to see that voter frustration, literally and figuratively. I don't know if anybody, I'm not a Twitter fan, but apparently there's quite a few hashtags around the internet these days. Hashtag Witch Hillary or hashtag Never Trump. My favorite that I just saw yesterday was actually a literal yard sign that said, "Everybody sucks." That's all it said. Now, it might be a little juvenile, but it got to the point. Now, voter frustration comes in different forms for a lot of different people, but really it stems from the fact that the people we see as our options, our candidates in front of us, we don't feel like we connect with them. We don't feel like they represent our true values. They don't represent our goals for either ourselves, our family, or our country. And by not having that resonation, that kind of internal commitment to these candidates, we tend to bargain our votes away. We, in previous elections, usually found a candidate that kind of sort of mostly fit what we thought we wanted for the country. And really what we're hoping for is that one of these candidates, if they match a certain percentage of things that we want, that's who we pick. And we really hope that if we were in that position, that this person would behave, at least marginally so, similarly to the way that we would if we were in that position. Now, unfortunately, in this election cycle, voter frustration is at an all-time high. The Gallup polls, which many people are familiar with, just completed a poll last week that said only 7% of Americans are confident in our political system and confident in the capabilities of our congressional leaders. 7%. A lot of people complain or are familiar with presidential approval numbers. That's like high 30s to high 40s. 7%. That's how little faith we have in the people that we vote for. It's amazing to me that it's that low. So this crisis of confidence and this urge to hyperventilate about this election cycle, especially this early, means that a lot of people, myself included, want to just throw your hands in the air. Say, that's it. If this is what I have, don't want any part of it. I'm not voting in the fall. I don't want my name attached to any of these people. That's it. I'm out. I'm done. And on most days, you could count me in that group of people. But the more I thought about it, and the more the months start ticking away and creeping toward November, the less empowered I felt by that decision. The less empowered I felt by simply abstaining. And it sounds cliche, but I really felt like if I didn't show up in November, that ability, that right, would be robbed, and it just would leave me even more frustrated. So what's the solution? Do we exercise our rights and cast a vote for a candidate that abrades our moral fabric and generally makes us ill? Or do we abstain and sit back on our couch and kind of watch this political show unfurl in front of us? You could do either of those, but I think there's a third option. One that might leave voters less frustrated, feeling like they've exercised their rights to vote, and also not like their hand was forced into making a decision that they wouldn't have on their own. There's this idea of down ballot repercussions, and it's been tossed around in this election cycle a bit because when people are so frustrated with the top candidates, meaning the presidential candidates, which are physically at the top of the ballot, that if they don't show up to the polls because of frustration, that the rest of those candidates that are under those two top contenders, which are down ballot, are lost in the political process. They are no longer part of the democratic process. Nobody's going to vote for them. And the very few are a skewed proportion of our true democracy. And in an election like this, which was oddly unhinged, that's a really big factor. You have all of these people running who are affected by those candidates above them, which have higher exposure, higher notoriety, generally push people's buttons a little easier. They have millions of dollars to spend on a campaign. But there are 469 seats in the US Congress up for election on November 8th. 469. 14 of those seats belong to the state of Michigan, and that's at the federal level. At a state level, we have all 110 seats in our state House of Representatives that are up for election on November 8th. All 110, every single one. So you want to change? There's no better way than to have an entire House of Representatives that's mobile, that's vacant, that's up for grabs. It's as close to a political blank slate as we could get. 110 seats up for grabs. And because of that, most political analysts have deemed Michigan this year as what they consider a battleground chamber. Not just a state, but that the fact that our entire color, as you would say, the color on a map, who owns the state as far as red and blue, could change this year because of that mobility in our House. And we all like to pin the tail on the presidential election. The idea and the path of the country is hinged and attached to our presidential candidates. But I would counter that and argue that that's not the case. Our legislation that affects us is right here. Those 124 seats that we have a say in this state are the best spot to start. There are very few families that are considered political legacies when you're talking about local elections. City council members, school board members, state representatives, state senators, very few of those are coming from these long-lived political families. Instead, these are our neighbors. There are teachers, there are coaches, our coworkers, our classmates. These are all people who live where you live, they've been where you've been, and they know how to represent you. So instead of feeling exhausted and frustrated like I did this early on in a political campaign, I implore you to look closer to home, where you might find some catharsis, and you might find some humanity that you won't find in a presidential slogan. Thank you.
All right, 1 minute on the clock, please. Thank you, Heather. That